And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So last year, a record number of guns were sold, an absolute screaming, flaming record. And 40 million in 1 year. And that's legal sales. That's the sales that we track. And generally speaking, since about half of guns sold, I think it's a little less than half of guns sold are sold, well, and actually nobody knows, right? Because they're not recorded, are sold at gun shows or through the, online or, friend to friend or whatever, person to person anyway. It may be as many as 80 million guns added to the mix last year. January of this year, this again, just legal guns, 4.1 million guns sold. That's the largest number. It's a 60% increase, actually, over the previous year. 4,137,480 guns. And this is the beginning of a trend that really began in February of last year. It is remarkable. Here in Portland, over the weekend, we had 7 people shot, 1 killed in downtown Portland. We've got gang wars going on in Portland. It's, they're largely happening in the neighborhoods from which the gangs are derived, which is kind of the saddest part of it. The people who are the victims are typically the most powerless, the least powerful people, the least, they have the fewest assets, the fewest access to safety and things like that. In Tucson, over the weekend, horrific scene. This was, in fact, the headline, horrific scene as gunman opens fire on emergency crews. A house was set on fire, and when the firefighters showed up, this was actually yesterday afternoon, when the firefighters showed up at the house, an armed man approached the ambulance and opened fire. He shot the EMT, the guy driving, in the head, and shot the other guy in the arm and chest. And in Utah, and again, these are just, this is like what happened over the weekend, right? A 15-year-old boy accidentally shoots and kills his 13-year-old friend. I didn't know the gun was loaded, right? The police initially took him off to the juvenile detention facility, and then they booked him, and then they concluded that it was, quote, a truly unfortunate, tragic accident. Gunfire deaths are among the 10 leading causes of death for people under 18. We are literally, and I keep saying this, the only country in the developed world that has this problem. We have just, massive levels of gunfire deaths. And for all the homicides that are done by gunfire, there's roughly an equal number of suicide. About half of all gun deaths in this country are suicides. And people who commit suicide using guns might be inclined to do it in a different way or not do it at all if they didn't have access to something where by pulling a little piece of metal, a 1/16 of an inch, suddenly the world just ends. I mean, this is, or the world ends for somebody else if you're pointing it at them. This is a crisis. Now, as you know, I'm a sports shooter. I respect guns. I know how to use guns. I've taken my kids shooting. I go shooting with my brothers whenever I get back to Michigan. It's what we do for fun. Seriously, I mean, one of my brothers has a whole bunch of guns. And he's not a crazy who's running around, threatening people and, wearing it across his chest like a giant phallus. No, it's just a hobby. I respect that. But this whole thing has gone out of control. I always bring it back to, why don't we regulate guns the same way we regulate cars? And that is that you have to have a shooter's license, you have to have proof of registration, essentially, the gun, and every year it gets renewed so that we know who these guns belong to, and you have to have liability insurance. Now, I realize that there are people who want to take it a step farther. They want to apply the same restrictions that are applied to abortion to buying guns. In many states, there's only one store that sells guns. That store typically has a large line of people out front who are holding up pictures of people who died by gunshot and yelling killer, killer, killer at people who walk into the gun store. That after you walk into the gun store, you have to watch a video that shows all the details of what a person looks like when they're dead, when they've been shot up with a gun. You have to listen to a lecture from the doctor or somebody representing the physician on, about the dangers of guns. Then you register with that gun store, and then you have to come back 3 days later to be able to buy your gun. I mean, these are all the restrictions that have been put on abortion. Why are we not putting similar restrictions on guns? I'm actually not advocating that we go quite that far, or even close to that far. But the fact that because of Republican opposition, because that party will sell itself out to whoever the highest bidder is. They were the official party of the tobacco industry right up until around 2000, when the big tobacco lawsuits started happening, and that no longer became, viable. They are still to this day the official political party of the fossil fuel industry, trying to do anything they can and everything they can to prevent, anything to mitigate climate change or to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. They're still denying climate change. We literally have the only political party in the developed world, major political party in the developed world, that denies climate change. Doesn't exist anywhere else. But we're also one of the only, I believe, the only developed country in the world who has judge-made law, Supreme Court-made law, that says that if somebody wants to own a politician, or if the gun industry wants to own a politician, that's no longer considered bribery or political corruption. That is free speech. And this free speech that the NRA has been engaging in on behalf of the gun industry that funds them, and that the gun industry has been engaging in, is killing us. We are dying as a result of this. Other countries have rational gun restrictions. You can buy a gun. You can own a gun in Australia, for example. You can, and they dialed back dramatically. Back in 1998, there was this mass slaughter down in Tasmania, this island. It's part of Australia. It's an island just off I believe, the southern coast of Australia. 30 some odd people were slaughtered, if my memory is correct, and the newspapers showed pictures of the carnage, and people all across Australia were like, whoa, we don't want that, Jack. We don't want that at all. And the government did this huge buyback program. And now it's a little more difficult to buy a gun. It's not as bad. It's not anywhere near as hard as it is to get an abortion in Missouri. But it's, you have to register your gun. You have to show who you are. You have to, it's straightforward stuff. Why don't we do this? Well, obviously, we know the answer. We have politicians who are bought and paid for by the gun industry, the weapons industry, which is an enormously profitable industry, whose executives are multi-millionaires and live in giant mansions. And the politicians that they own, they're doing very well, too. Thank you very much. So I don't have a specific solution to this problem other than letting your legislators, your elected legislators, know that you would like them to do something about the gun problem. Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona is probably well positioned to lead this charge. His wife, Gabby Giffords, was shot, survived, but, is handicapped as a result of it. But we need to be spreading the word. This is outrageous.